Dr. Eleanor Chen stood at the viewport of the United Earth Science vessel Curiosity, staring at the swirling, iridescent atmosphere of Kepler 62F. To most humans, the churning clouds of the alien world appeared as a beautiful but impenetrable veil, hiding whatever secrets lay beneath. To Eleanor, they represented something more, a challenge, an invitation, and perhaps a warning. Final calibrations complete, Dr. Chun, said Lieutenant Jameson from his station. The probe will launch in 5 minutes. Eleanor nodded absently, her mind already racing ahead to what the probe might discover. Kepler 62F had been designated as a Class A xenobiological research priority after initial scans revealed complex atmospheric compounds consistent with biological processes. The scientific community was abuzz with theories, but no one had yet managed to pierce the planet's thick, electromagnetic atmosphere to gather concrete data. In 01, that is, until now. Until Eleanor. Her invention, the Neural Interface Visual Exchange Relay, or NIVER, represented a quantum leap in remote sensing technology. Traditional probes could only transmit basic sensory data, temperature readings, chemical analyses, electromagnetic frequencies. But NIVER was different. It could transmit the complete sensory experience of the probe directly into a human brain. Eleanor would not just see what the probe saw. She would see as the probe saw, with whatever adaptations were necessary to process alien stimuli. It was the closest thing to actually being there, without the inconvenience of a 1,200 light-year journey or the certainty of death in an unbreathable atmosphere. Dr. Chun called Captain Rodriguez from the doorway of the observation deck. A word. Eleanor sighed. She'd been expecting this. Rodriguez had been skeptical of the NIVER project from the beginning, concerned about the untested neural interfaces and the potential psychological effects of experiencing alien sensory input. Captain, she acknowledged, turning to face the stern, gray-haired woman. The launch sequence has begun, Rodriguez said, her arms crossed. Are you absolutely certain you want to go through with this? The neural linkage is untested in field conditions. We have no idea what kind of input you might receive from an alien biosphere. With all due respect, Captain, we have been over this, Eleanor replied, trying to keep the impatience from her voice. The NIVER system has been thoroughly tested in simulations. The neural dampeners will prevent any sensory overload, and the cognitive filters will translate alien perception into something my brain can process. Simulations are not reality, Dr. Rodriguez countered. And we're not talking about some mild hallucinogenic experience here. You are attempting to process sensory information evolved for a completely different biological system. Eleanor felt her jaw tighten. That's exactly the point, Captain. For the first time in human history, we have the opportunity to experience a truly alien perspective. Think about what that could teach us, not just about Kepler 62F, but about the nature of consciousness itself. Rodriguez held Eleanor's gaze for a long moment, then sighed. The UE Science Directorate has approved the mission, so it's not my call to make. But as captain of this vessel, I need you to understand the risks. If anything goes wrong, we pull the plug. Agreed, Eleanor said, relieved. 1 minute to launch, came Jameson's voice over the intercom. Rodriguez gave Eleanor a final, searching look. Good luck, Doctor. I hope this alien perspective of yours is worth it. As the captain left, Eleanor turned back to the viewport, watching as the small, silver probe was ejected from the Curiosity's launch bay. It gleamed momentarily in the light of Kepler's distant sun before disappearing into the swirling clouds below. Eleanor made her way to the ship's laboratory, where the NIVER interface had been set up. The neural cap, a sleek, silver device studded with electrodes and quantum receivers, waited on a padded examination table. Dr. Samuels, the ship's neurologist, looked up as she entered. All systems are nominal. The probe has begun its descent and is transmitting basic telemetry. Are you ready to make history, Dr. Chun? Eleanor took a deep breath. As ready as I will ever be. She lay back on the examination table as Samuels fitted the neural cap to her head. The sensation was strange, but not uncomfortable, like wearing a hat made of gentle electrical tingles. Neural synchronization at 97%, reported Samuels, monitoring the readouts. Cognitive filters engaged. Sensory dampeners at recommended levels. He paused, his hand hovering over the final activation switch. Last chance to change her mind. Eleanor closed her eyes. Proceed. A moment later, her world exploded at first. There was nothing but chaos. A roaring, blinding confusion of sensations that made no sense to her human brain. Colors that didn't exist in the human visual spectrum flashed across her consciousness. Sounds became textures. Scents took on geometric properties. Eleanor's mind reeled, struggling to process the alien input. Then, gradually, the NIVER's cognitive filters began to work, translating the incomprehensible into something her brain could understand. The chaotic sensations resolved themselves into a strange but navigable landscape. She was falling, or rather, the probe was falling, through the upper atmosphere of Kepler 62F. All around her, the air was thick with electromagnetic particles that glowed and pulsed like living things. Through the probe's specialized sensors, Eleanor could see the intricate dance of charged particles, forming complex patterns that reminded her of neural networks or fungal growth. Dr. Chen, can you hear me? Samuel's voice seemed to come from very far away, barely audible over the symphony of electromagnetic frequencies that the probe was detecting. Yes, Eleanor managed to reply, though speaking while immersed in the alien sensory experience was disorienting. I'm receiving input. It's incredible. The atmosphere isn't just gas. It's alive with electrical activity. Organized electrical activity. The probe continued its descent, and the patterns in the air became more complex, more structured. They weren't random. They were communicating, exchanging information in bursts of electrical impulses that the NIVER translated as flashes of color and sound. I think, Eleanor said slowly, struggling to articulate what she was experiencing, I think we are encountering some kind of atmospheric life form. Not solid matter. Pure energy organized into self-sustaining patterns. That's impossible, came Rodriguez's voice, sharp with disbelief. Life requires physical structure, molecular complexity. Not as we understand it, Eleanor countered. But what I'm seeing, these aren't just random electromagnetic discharges. They are repeating, evolving patterns. They are responding to the probe's presence. She paused as a particularly complex pattern enveloped the probe. They are curious. The pattern, swirling, fractal structure of electrical impulses that the NIVER rendered as a blue-violet spiral, seemed to be examining the probe, sending delicate tendrils of energy across its surface. There was no hostility in the contact, only a probing, questioning quality that Eleanor recognized instinctively as curiosity. We need to establish communication, Eleanor said, her scientific excitement mounting. The NIVER can transmit as well as receive. If I can translate our electromagnetic signatures into something similar to their patterns. Dr. Chen, I strongly advise against attempting communication at this stage, Rodriguez interjected. We have no idea what we are dealing with. Captain, with all due respect, this is exactly what we came here to do, Eleanor replied firmly. First contact with an alien intelligence. I'm proceeding with basic mathematical sequences. Through the NIVER interface, Eleanor mentally instructed the probe to emit a simple pattern of prime numbers, the universal mathematical language that any intelligence should recognize. The probe's electromagnetic field pulsed in the sequence. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The electromagnetic entities surrounding the probe erupted in a cascade of complex patterns, echoing the prime sequence, but then extending it, elaborating on it, transforming it into something far more complex. Through the NIVER's translation, Eleanor experienced the response as a symphony of color and sound, beautiful beyond anything she had ever encountered. They understand, she whispered, awestruck, and they are responding not just with recognition, but with elaboration. They are showing us that they comprehend the mathematical principle and can extend it. For the next hour, Eleanor engaged in an increasingly complex exchange with the atmospheric entities. They progressed from mathematical sequences to simple spatial concepts, then to more abstract ideas. The NIVER's cognitive filters struggled to translate the alien concepts, sometimes rendering them as synesthetic experiences, mathematical equations that tasted like cinnamon, geometric shapes that sounded like violin music. I think, Eleanor said carefully, they are trying to convey something about their perception of time and space. It's not linear like ours. They experience multiple temporalities simultaneously. That's consistent with quantum field theory, commented Dr. Samuels. If these entities exist as electromagnetic patterns rather than matter, they might not be bound by the same temporal constraints as physical beings. The communication grew more complex, more intimate. The electromagnetic entities began to envelop the probe completely, their patterns intertwining with its sensors. Through the NIVER interface, Eleanor felt a strange sense of merging, as if her consciousness was bleeding into the alien patterns and vice versa. "They are inviting me in," she murmured. "They want to show me something." "Dr. Chen, your neural patterns are showing signs of stress," Samuels warned. "I recommend we terminate the connection." "No," Eleanor said firmly. "I'm Fina. This is what we came for. I need to see what they're trying to show me." She mentally accepted the alien's invitation, allowing her consciousness to follow the probe deeper into their electromagnetic reality. The sensation was bizarre, yet exhilarating, like diving into an ocean made of thought and electricity rather than water. And then, abruptly, she was seeing through alien eyes. Not the probe's sensors, but the actual perceptual experience of the electromagnetic entities themselves. The universe exploded into dimensions she had never imagined. She could see time, not as a line or even as a branching path, but as a shimmering field of possibilities, all existing simultaneously. She could perceive the quantum fabric of reality, the buzzing uncertainty at the heart of matter. And she could see the connections, the invisible threads that linked all things across space and time. But most astonishingly, she could see Earth, not as it appeared now, but as it had appeared thousands of years ago and would appear thousands of years in the future, all at once. The electromagnetic beings existed in a perceptual reality that transcended the human understanding of time. "They know us," Eleanor gasped. "They have been observing Earth for millennia. Not physically, their consciousness can extend across space-time. They have watched us evolve." "That's not possible." Rodriguez's voice cut in, sharp with alarm. "No form of communication can exceed the speed of light. Even quantum entanglement can't transmit information faster than light." "Not according to our physics," Eleanor replied. "But these beings, they don't experience reality the way we do. They exist partially outside our dimensional constraints." As she spoke, the aliens conveyed something else, a sense of recognition, of kinship. They saw in humans a familiar pattern, a shared capacity for curiosity and exploration. But there was something more, something that filled Eleanor with a profound sense of unease. "They're showing me something," she said slowly. "A pattern in space-time, a disruption coming toward Earth. Something catastrophic." The vision was terrifying in its clarity. A massive coronal ejection from Earth's sun, far larger than anything recorded in human history. A storm of solar radiation that would strip away the planet's protective magnetosphere and scorch its surface. And it was coming soon, within the next decade. "They are warning us," Eleanor realized. "That's why they responded to our probe. They recognized us as kindred intelligences and wanted to warn us of what they can see in the future present." "Can you get specific data?" Rodriguez asked, her skepticism giving way to concern. "Time frame? Magnitude?" Eleanor tried to focus on the details of the vision, to extract concrete information from the alien perspective. "It's difficult to translate their temporal perception into our calendrical system, but approximately 8 years from now, the coronal ejection will be preceded by increasing solar flare activity, culminating in a plasma ejection approximately 50 times more powerful than the Carrington event of 1859. That would be extinction level," Samuels murmured. "For most Earth life, yes," Eleanor confirmed grimly. "Unless we prepare." The electromagnetic entities surrounded the probe once more, their patterns conveying a complex message that the NIVER translated as both warning and reassurance. They had observed other intelligent species facing similar catastrophes. Some had perished. Others had survived by adapting their technology and their societies. "They're offering us something," Eleanor said, struggling to comprehend the alien concept. a kind of technological principle, not specific blueprints, but a fundamental approach to generating protective electromagnetic fields on a planetary scale. She focused intently, trying to grasp the alien knowledge being offered. It was like trying to understand quantum mechanics through interpretive dance. The concepts didn't translate neatly into human terms. But gradually, through the NIVER's cognitive filters, she began to comprehend the basic principles. It involves manipulating Earth's existing magnetosphere, she explained, amplifying it using a network of orbital stations that would generate complementary fields. The combined effect would create a powerful enough shield to deflect even a major coronal ejection. That's beyond our current technological capabilities, Rodriguez objected. Yes, but not beyond what we could develop in 8 years, given the fundamental principles, Eleanor countered, especially with international cooperation and focused resources. As she spoke, Eleanor became aware of a growing pressure in her mind. The alien perspective was beginning to overwhelm the NIVER's cognitive filters. Their perception of reality was too vast, too complex for her human brain to process for extended periods. Dr. Chen, your neural readings are approaching critical levels, Samuels warned. We need to terminate the connection. Just a little longer, Eleanor gasped. The aliens were conveying one final message, a concept so profound that it made her mind reel. They were showing her humanity's potential future, not one path, but many. In some, Earth perished in fire. In others, humanity survived, but remained bound to its solar system, eventually dying with its sun. But in a few, a precious few, humanity reached beyond its cradle, spreading consciousness across the galaxy. And in those futures, humans and electromagnetic beings like those on Kepler 62F encountered each other again, not through remote probes, but directly, consciousness to consciousness. They became something new together, a synthesis of matter and energy, physical and non-physical, that transcended the limitations of both. They're showing us what we could become, Eleanor whispered. Not just survivors, but evolutionaries, partners in cosmic consciousness. The pressure in her mind became unbearable. The last thing Eleanor saw through alien eyes was a vision of Earth surrounded by a shimmering, protective veil of electromagnetic energy, human technology inspired by alien consciousness, saving an entire world. Then darkness. Eleanor awoke in the ship's medical bay, her head pounding. Dr. Samuels stood over her, his expression a mixture of concern and awe. "Welcome back," he said. "You have been unconscious for almost 12 hours." Eleanor tried to sit up, then thought better of it as a wave of dizziness washed over her. "The aliens," she said urgently. "The data, all recorded," Samuels assured her. "Everything that came through the NIVER interface was logged and is being analyzed. Captain Rodriguez has already sent a priority transmission to Earth with your preliminary findings about the solar event. They will think we are crazy," Eleanor murmured. "Perhaps initially," Samuels conceded, "but the electromagnetic principles you described are testable, and your predictions about increased solar activity can be verified through observation. If those check out, then they will have to take the warnings seriously." Eleanor finished. Captain Rodriguez entered the medical bay, her usual stern expression softened by what might have been respect. "Dr. Chen," she acknowledged. "Feeling better? I have had worse hangovers." Eleanor managed to joke weakly. "I have reviewed the preliminary data from your encounter," Rodriguez said, carefully choosing her words. "I have to admit, it's compelling. The Science Directorate is convening an emergency session to assess your findings." "And the technology?" Eleanor asked. "The protective field concept. Initial analysis suggests it's theoretically sound," Rodriguez replied. "Ambitious, certainly, beyond our current capabilities, but not beyond what we could potentially develop with focused effort." Eleanor closed her eyes, relief washing over her. "They believed us. The evidence was hard to dismiss," Rodriguez said dryly, "especially after what happened to the probe." Eleanor's eyes snapped open. "What do you mean? What happened to the probe?" Rodriguez and Samuels exchanged glances. "After you lost consciousness, the probe's electromagnetic signature changed," Samuels explained. "It began emitting patterns similar to those of the alien entities, as if they had somehow altered its fundamental programming. And then it ascended," Rodriguez continued. It rose out of Kepler 62F's atmosphere and took up an orbit around the planet. It's still there, still active, still emitting those patterns. Almost like a beacon, Eleanor finished softly. Or an ambassador. The implication hung in the air between them. The electromagnetic beings hadn't just shared information. They had established a permanent connection, a bridge between their consciousness and human technology. "We're going to need more NIVER units," Eleanor said after a moment, "and volunteers willing to undergo the neural interface training. The Science Directorate is already discussing a return mission," Rodriguez confirmed, "with a team of specialists prepared for extended neural interface sessions." Eleanor nodded, already thinking ahead to the challenges they would face. The technical hurdles of developing the protective field technology, the political battles to secure global cooperation, the scientific task of fully understanding the alien consciousness. But behind these practical concerns lay a deeper awareness. Humanity had been offered something precious, not just a warning of impending catastrophe, but a glimpse of cosmic perspective. Through alien eyes, they had seen their own potential future, not as conquerors of the universe, but as partners in its evolving consciousness that IT would change everything. Their science, their philosophy, their understanding of what it meant to be intelligent beings in a vast and complex cosmos. The path ahead would not be easy, but it would be profoundly new. And that, Eleanor reflected as she closed her eyes again, was worth any headache 0.8 years later. Dr. Eleanor Chen stood on the observation deck of the International Space Station, watching as the first of the magnetosphere amplification satellites was deployed. Below, the blue-green sphere of Earth seemed fragile, vulnerable, a tiny island of life in the cosmic void. Yet soon it would be protected by a technology born from the meeting of two profoundly different forms of consciousness. Human ingenuity inspired by alien perception. The satellite network, once completed, would create an enhanced electromagnetic shield capable of deflecting even the massive coronal ejection that alien consciousness had foreseen. Deployment complete, Dr. Chen reported Commander Williams from Mission Control. Satellite is initializing its systems. Eleanor watched as the satellite's solar panels unfurled like metallic petals, drinking in the sun's energy. In a few moments, it would activate its electromagnetic generators, creating the first small segment of what would eventually become a planetary shield. Neural interface team standing by. Came another voice, Dr. Patel, Eleanor's protege, and now the lead researcher on the NIVER project. This was the most crucial and controversial aspect of the protective system. Each satellite contained a modified NIVER unit, allowing specially trained human operators to merge their consciousness partially with the electromagnetic field generated by the satellite network. Human intuition and decision-making would guide the system, making it far more adaptable than any purely automated setup could be. Critics had called it reckless, allowing human minds to interface directly with such powerful electromagnetic fields. But Eleanor and her team had spent years refining the NIVER technology, making it safer, more stable, more precisely controllable. And the volunteers, most of them scientists and engineers who had worked on the project, understood the risks and accepted them because they had all seen the data. They knew what was coming. Engage the interface. Eleanor instructed that on Earth, in a heavily shielded facility, the first team of neural operators donned their advanced NIVER caps and prepared to link their consciousness with the satellite. The technology had evolved dramatically since Eleanor's first encounter on Kepler 62F, where the original NIVER had simply translated alien sensory input into human comprehensible form. The new version allowed for true consciousness extension, a partial merging of human mind with electromagnetic field. Neural synchronization established, reported Dr. Patel after a tense moment. Operators report clear interface with satellite systems. Field generation commencing. Outside the space station, the satellite began to glow with a subtle blue radiance, visible evidence of the enormous electromagnetic field it was generating. It was only a tiny fraction of what the completed network would produce, but it was a beginning. "It's working," breathed Commander Williams. "Field strength exactly as predicted." Eleanor nodded, but her attention was focused on something else, a familiar sensation at the edge of her perception. Since her encounter with the electromagnetic beings of Kepler 62F, she had occasionally experienced moments of expanded awareness, as if some echo of alien consciousness had remained within her mind. Usually, these episodes were brief and faint, but now, as the satellite's field stabilized, the sensation intensified. Through some mechanism she couldn't fully explain, Eleanor found herself perceiving the electromagnetic field directly, experiencing it not as visual data, but as pure pattern, pure relationship, the way the aliens had. And within that perception came a sense of recognition, of confirmation. The path they had chosen was correct. Humanity was taking its first steps toward a new kind of existence, not abandoning its physical nature, but transcending its limitations through technology inspired by alien consciousness. In the years since the Kepler 62F mission, Eleanor had often wondered if the electromagnetic beings had known what they were setting in motion. Had they foreseen not just the solar threat, but humanity's response? Had they calculated that the warning would spur technological development that would ultimately change the course of human evolution? Now, sensing the subtle resonances within the satellite's field, she suspected the answer was yes. The warning about the coronal ejection had been genuine, but it had also been a catalyst, a push toward a particular branching path in humanity's possible futures. Dr. Chen, Commander Williams' voice broke into her awareness. Are you all right? You looked elsewhere for a moment. Eleanor smiled, just thinking about how far we have come, and how far we still have to go. In the 8 years since her return from Kepler 62F, humanity had accomplished what many had thought impossible. Nations had set aside their differences to work toward the common goal of planetary defense. Resources had been diverted from military spending to the development of the shield technology. The brightest minds on Earth had collaborated to solve the enormous technical challenges involved, and beyond the practical achievements lay the philosophical revolution. The knowledge that intelligent consciousness could exist in forms utterly alien to human experience had transformed humanity's understanding of its place in the cosmos. The old anthropocentric assumptions had been shattered, replaced by a humbler, but ultimately more expansive vision of cosmic intelligent life. Satellite field stable at 100% of projected capacity, reported Dr. Patel. Neural operators report optimal interface conditions. Eleanor nodded, watching as the satellite's blue glow stabilized. One down, hundreds more to go before the shield would be complete. But they would make it. The coronal ejection was still months away, according to their most recent solar observations, and the satellite deployment was proceeding ahead of schedule. Dr. Chen, said Commander Williams after a moment, there's been a development you should know about. The Kepler 62F probe, it's changed its behavior. Eleanor turned to him sharply. In what way? For the past 8 years, it's maintained a stable orbit around the planet, emitting the same electromagnetic patterns. But 3 days ago, it began emitting a new pattern, and yesterday, it broke orbit. Where's it going? Eleanor asked, though she already suspected the answer. Initial trajectory analysis suggests it's headed toward Earth, Williams confirmed. At its current velocity, factoring in gravitational assists, it would arrive in approximately 2 months. Just before the coronal ejection, Eleanor felt a chill run down her spine, followed by a strange certainty. This was not a coincidence. I need to speak with the science directorate, she said. Immediately. 2 months later, Eleanor stood in the central control facility of the Planetary Shield project. Around her, screens displayed the status of the satellite network, now nearly complete. The blue glow of the electromagnetic shield was visible from Earth's surface as a subtle aurora that encircled the planet day and night. But Eleanor's attention was focused on a different screen, one showing the approach of a small, silver object that had once been an Earth-made probe, but was now something else entirely. Final approach, trajectory confirmed, reported the tracking officer. It will enter Earth orbit in approximately 3 hours. Beside Eleanor, the members of the International Science Directorate watched in tense silence. None of them knew exactly what to expect. The probe that had once communicated with the electromagnetic beings of Kepler 62F had been fundamentally altered by that contact. For 8 years, it had orbited the alien world, emitting patterns that human scientists had only partially decoded. And now it had returned, just as Earth faced its greatest threat. Neural Interface Team reports unusual activity in the shield network, announced another technician. The electromagnetic field is showing harmonics that weren't in the original programming. Eleanor exchanged glances with Dr. Patel. They had anticipated this possibility. The NIVER technology that allowed human operators to interface with the shield was based on the same principles as the original probe's communication system. If the returning probe was attempting communication, the shield itself might serve as a receiver. Connect me to the neural interface, Eleanor requested. Dr. Patel looked alarmed. Eleanor, we don't know what kind of signal that probe is transmitting. It could overwhelm the NIVER system. If it wanted to harm us, it could have done so already, Eleanor countered. It's trying to communicate, and I'm the one with the most experience interpreting alien electromagnetic patterns. After a moment of hesitation, the directorate gave its approval. Eleanor was led to a specialized interface chamber, a sealed room containing a single reclined chair surrounded by electromagnetic generators designed to amplify the connection between her consciousness and the shield network. The NIVER cap they placed on her head was far more sophisticated than the one she had used 8 years ago. It didn't just translate alien sensory input. It allowed her consciousness to extend beyond her physical body, to merge partially with the electromagnetic fields of the shield. Neural synchronization in progress, came Dr. Patel's voice through the chamber speakers. Field harmonics intensifying. The probe appears to be responding to our connection. Eleanor closed her eyes as the familiar sensation washed over her. The expansion of awareness, the perception of reality beyond human senses. Through the NIVER interface, she could feel the entire shield network as an extension of her own nervous system. And within that expanded awareness, she could sense the approaching probe, not as a physical object, but as a pattern of consciousness, a complex electromagnetic signature that was both alien and strangely familiar. It was communicating, not in words or even in abstract mathematical concepts, but in pure pattern, showing rather than telling. And what it showed was astonishing. The coronal ejection that threatened Earth was not a random stellar event. It was part of a larger pattern, a cycle of stellar evolution that affected not just Earth's sun, but all similar stars throughout the galaxy. The electromagnetic beings of Kepler 62f had observed this cycle for millions of years, watching as planets with emerging intelligent life faced the challenge of their star's inevitable instability. It was a cosmic filter, a hurdle that all technologically advancing species eventually encountered. Those who could not develop the technology to shield their worlds perished. Those who could went on to join a galactic community of consciousness. And now the probe, or rather, the alien consciousness that had merged with it, was offering something more, a connection. The shield that humanity had built would protect Earth from the immediate threat of the coronal ejection. But the technology had potential far beyond mere planetary defense. Properly evolved, it could serve as a means of communication and consciousness exchange between humanity and other intelligent species throughout the galaxy. They're not just warning us, Eleanor murmured, her voice transmitting from the interface chamber to the control room. They are inviting us. Through the NIVER connection, she could sense the probe's purpose now. It had returned not just to confirm the coming solar event, but to establish a permanent link between human consciousness and the network of electromagnetic beings that span the galaxy. A link that would allow humanity to learn, to grow, to evolve beyond its current limitations. But the choice had to be humanity's own. The aliens would not force the connection. They would only offer the possibility. The probe is entering Earth orbit, announced the tracking officer. And the coronal ejection has begun. Massive plasma release detected from the sun's surface. All eyes turned to the solar monitoring screens, where the fiery eruption was clearly visible, a vast arc of superheated plasma erupting from the sun's surface, dwarfing anything in recorded human history. Impact with Earth's orbital path in approximately 17 hours, reported the solar dynamics officer. Shield status, all systems nominal, came the response. Field strength at 98% of maximum capacity. Neural operators maintaining stable interface. Through her expanded awareness, Eleanor could feel the shield preparing itself. The human operator's consciousnesses working together with the electromagnetic field generators to create a protective bubble around the planet. And she could sense something else. The probe, now in Earth orbit, beginning to emit patterns that resonated with the shield, strengthening it, refining it. "The probe is enhancing our shield," she reported. "It's teaching the field how to adapt to the specific characteristics of the ejection. Humanity and alien consciousness working together to preserve Earth." It was exactly the future that the electromagnetic beings had shown her 8 years ago. Not just survival, but partnership. Evolution. 17 hours later, as the massive wall of solar plasma struck Earth's augmented magnetosphere, Eleanor stood at the viewport of the shield control station, watching as the invisible electromagnetic battle played out in the upper atmosphere. The only visible signs were the spectacular auroras that danced across the sky, more brilliant and colorful than any in human history. Through the NIVER interface, however, she could perceive the true magnitude of what was happening. The shield, humanity's technology guided by alien principles, withholding, deflecting the lethal radiation that would otherwise have scoured the planet's surface. And as the shield performed its protective function, it was changing, evolving, becoming something more complex and powerful than its human designers had envisioned. The probe's alien consciousness was showing them the next step, how to transform the planetary shield into a permanent structure that could serve not just as protection, but as a means of connecting with other shielded worlds throughout the galaxy. A network of consciousness spanning the stars. As the solar storm began to subside, Eleanor felt a profound sense of standing at a threshold. Humanity had faced extinction and survived, not through military might or blind luck, but through a synthesis of human ingenuity and alien perspective. They had seen through alien eyes and learned to build technologies beyond their previous imagination. And now they were being offered a place in a vast community of consciousness, a chance to evolve beyond the limitations of their isolated world. "Dr. Chen," came Dr. Patel's voice, breaking into her expanded awareness. "The ejection peak has passed. The shield held. Earth is safe." Eleanor opened her eyes, returning her consciousness fully to her human body. Around her, the control room erupted in cheers and embraces as the magnitude of what they had accomplished sank in. But Eleanor's mind was already racing ahead to the message that the alien-altered probe had conveyed through the shield network. An invitation to the stars, to evolution, to a future beyond humanity's wildest dreams. Through alien eyes, she had seen what they could become. And now, that future was within reach. "Earth is safe," she agreed, a smile spreading across her face. "And humanity is just getting started."